As you see in the title of the video, I'm coming in strong on this topic. As someone who was in high school during the 2015 to 2017 era of YouTube, that was filled with anti-SJW, Gamergate, and anti-intellectual content, I can surely say that this content impacted Gen Z and younger millennials, let alone their targeted harassment victims, making the internet even more unsafe. I was greatly impacted by this content, especially being the only Black and trans person in Orange County, the Orange County suburbs being the reddest part of SoCal, which constantly alienated me as I spent my entire life being the only Black student in all my classrooms. The normalization of racist and bigoted content has lasting effects. The further normalization of the N-word thanks to Idubbz and his peers. I and other Black people being forced to bear people saying it's just a word as they purposely say it around us. The casual, disingenuous, anti-intellectual, and racist takes on Black Lives Matter made it harder to get progress made in the fight against police brutality. While Black and brown lives were being lost and queer people were fighting for visibility to expand our rights, these so-called edgelords made billions of dollars punching down our marginalized people. This ultimately created what we know as the alt-right pipeline. You start off watching bigoted and racist comedy videos that would lead to even more outwardly right-wing content being recommended in the algorithm. Before a minor and a young college student knows it, they'd end up on a Ben Shapiro, Alex Jones, Richard Spencer, and/or Stefan Molyneux's videos. This radicalized and indoctrinated so many people, which led to Trump getting elected. I was one of the victims of such a pipeline when I first found Blair White in 2015. The self-hate it built within me that I was forced to undo on my own without any help of the now rebranded bigoted creators. BIPOC and queer people had no choice but to live with the traumas of surviving this hateful content. We were just collateral damage to their means to their ends of making a buck on regressive content. In the second quarter of 2017 was when YouTube finally stepped in and did something about the monetized content since advertisers were pulling away from the platform, forcing these creators to slowly rebrand unless they risked losing their platform or income they made online, making it less lucrative unless you were the top dogs that went further right like Candace Owens and Blair White. So it's understandable when BIPOC and queer people are skeptical when we see a 6 to 7 year later apology after the money was already made, long after houses, cars, high-end clothing, Birkin bags were bought, expensive tattoos, fancy dinners, investments, and more were already made off of racist and bigoted content. So yes, it rings hollow when we get the bare minimum crumbs of an apology that only benefited them since it put their mostly white audience back in good graces with them. They were deemed brand friendly again, which raised their income, giving them even more opportunities outside of YouTube. While many forget all the people they ran off the platform and even the internet altogether, it pisses me off the more I think about it, which now turned into this video essay exploring whether or not these creators have changed and done the needed work to be worthy of forgiveness. So with all that being said, let's jump into this crumb apology that so many kept saying was the best of YouTube apology videos.
For a while, I felt like if I changed my content over time, that people would see that as a reflection of who I am and what I value. But I'm starting to realize that that is a very weak and passive way to, run my channel and live my life, and then make a video about how it's okay to say slurs. I think I should have the balls to make an apology video and take accountability for the mistakes I've made. So that's what this video is. I've realized that I need to be crystal clear about what I believe, so there's no room for ambiguity. I am responsible for creating a lot of hurtful and damaging content on this channel, and I've also created a culture of apathy and a lot of cruelty as well. Some of the videos I've made have been very not edgy. I don't think they some of these videos were edgy. I think they were just outright cruel. So I don't want people to, get it confused about, where I stand. I have made some cruel, hurtful content, and I was being very bigoted in a lot of my videos, and I justified it because, I didn't think it was too serious. And I thought that people were going to see that I had good intentions, but that's so silly, Casual racism is still racism. Casual bigotry is still bigotry.
good intentions that means nothing in the long run when the impact is greater than their supposed good intentions and using the N-word uncensored. I also want to say that there's no such thing as casual racism, especially when you're using the N-word. It's just racism. This idea of casual racism is only afforded to white people since they're punching down on everyone else but themselves. It's such a cop-out mentality, and to still use that phrase, casual racism, shows me he hasn't dug deep enough, especially when he literally called black people the N-word in his videos, which is an insult to write off as casual racism. This is also the only time in his videos or other appearances where he uses the word racism. He hides behind the words bigoted and harmful, which doesn't necessarily mean racism. You can make bigoted content that isn't racist. It's the fact that he knows that racism stings more than the word bigoted does. This is where I started to peep at the manipulative nature of his apology. He had the acorns to say the N-word fully uncensored so many times in videos that had nothing to do with content cops, so he should have the acorns to say racist in his apology video more than once, and definitely not hiding behind the term casual racism.
I know that this apology isn't enough. I've clearly done a lot of damage. You know, these videos have been up for a long time and have accumulated millions of views. I shouldn't be able to just make an apology video and walk away from it. This is something that I should live the rest of my life with, and I expect to. I've profited off of this bigoted content for years, and I've made a successful career out of it, and that's not right. I think that this is only a step in the right direction, and I know that a lot more needs to be done to even approach a life that I would think would be like acceptable. I'm also sorry to all the black viewers and minority groups who had to put up with that video and put up with, you know, the phrases. I said either it's all okay or none of it's okay. And that's just so dangerous and stupid. A very big thing that has sort of altered my view on all of this is just the amount of hate and harassment my wife Anissa has received over the years. So thank you for watching, everyone. I do want to create more regular content, and you know, I don't want to just have the next 5 videos be apologies.
He says he shouldn't be able to just make an apology video and walk away from it. But let's see if he does exactly that by the end of the segment. He acknowledges that a sorry won't be enough and how he profited off of racist and bigoted content. I'm holding him to the fire on the racist part since he keeps hiding behind the words bigoted. I also notice he only gives black people 14 seconds in his apology, while giving Tana, a white woman, the majority of it, who also said the N-word. I also dislike how he hides behind the word slurs. Say you normalize the usage of the N-word, just how you said it so loudly with your chest when you were profiting from the usage of that racist shock humor. I'll revisit his wife later in the video, but let's laser in on him saying he just wants to make regular content. Like he said, he doesn't want to make 5 apology videos, which is starting to sound like a contradiction to his earlier statements on how he shouldn't just be able to make an apology video and walk away from it all. But let's see what actions he has made since then. Before I do, let's peek at a few black people's thoughts on his apology that most of the viewers still weren't checking for, just how we were ignored in 2016.
I appreciate him finally coming out and making this video, but I don't forgive you mainly because it's too damn late. Like, you waited years to do this. People have been telling you what you was doing was wrong for years. You waited so long, and the fans you pushed into being outright demonic people have already hardened, and they don't need your validation to continue being terrible people. They're gonna watch this and say he's just a soy boy leftist now. Like, they don't need you anymore. So, and you can't apologize and just say, oh, it was bad that I said the N-word. You said it a bunch of times, bro. Several times per video. Like, yeah, it's good to apologize, but nobody.
That's facts on an apology being too late now that his ex-fans truly don't need him to validate their hatred. They have hardened, and they did mock Idubbz for even making an apology video. It's actually 90% of the videos you see when looking up Idubbz till this day. Another reason why I made this video since I didn't see him held to the fire other than from D'Angelo Wallace and Olaimi, who interviewed him. The rest were non-black people who either shout on him or were quick to praise him on his latest hell apology, quickly uplifted him, which drowned out the black, brown, and queer people that should have been listened to at this moment. But just how people didn't care in 2016, they once again ignored what we had to say. But we're long used to that by now. Before I dig deeper on what he has done post-apology, let's peek at a few clips of his first interview after his apology video. Somehow, the amazing Olaimi was able to have an interview and directly challenge him on his past mindset and offered him ways he can improve. Let's hear some of the key moments that stuck out to me that's worth discussing.
In his apology, he singled out only one creator. At first, the only name he singles out to apologize to in this video
is a white woman.
Franchesca. Okay, we're right here. We are right.
I mean, you know, I clocked that immediately.
But it's even the center of what I believe drove the desire to go this path, because I think his audience, what happened is the audience,
they were attacking his wife,
and that is the tea. And that is the tea.
That's when it got real.
and that's why I'm like, so it got real for you when a white woman was hurt.
I'll be honest, I first didn't think of the Tana angle, so seeing two highly respected black women quickly point that out made me feel a little embarrassed with myself, but then quickly turned into anger. Like they said, he centered whiteness even within an apology for anti-blackness and racism towards black people. Franchesca Ramsey, one of his victims, who was also one of the largest targets by anti-SJW creators in 2015 through 2017, clocked how it got real for Idubbz once his wife was impacted. Of course, his wife doesn't deserve any hate she's gotten from Idubbz fans. But let's look deeper into the mindset of ignoring how he hurt a whole generation of black people with no care.
What I find interesting is that even in apologizing for doing racist things, a white woman is who was apologized to, as though there weren't black people who were called the N-word. And I wonder, because that took me down a rabbit hole of watching, videos, and I saw a content cop you did on Jinx.
On camera.
You don't get a break in the beginning. No resting. 100% 24/7 grind.
Damn, this is on the grind.
You call these black people, you call black people themselves the N-word, but they aren't singled out in the apology, and I wonder why it is that that's the case.
This was a royal moment in this interview because I highly doubt it even crossed his mind that he focused so much of his apology to Tana, yet not a single apology to any black creator, as if he didn't call them the N-word multiple times. This shows us he didn't even think as deeply as people who accepted his apology on the behalf of black people stated. It's truly giving PR vibes, but let's keep going.
I totally get Franchesca's feelings of you can't undo 5-10 years of harassment that I've received.
Yeah.
So I get it. I wish, all I can think of, at this point is to communicate my headspace and where I was at the time and how I came to terms with understanding my role and responsibility in our community, and just communicate to that to people, because that's as close as I can get to undoing things or fixing things.
Yeah,
I've had to interact with boxing is a community that has a lot of marginalized people in it. There are a lot of black people in boxing, Mexicans. It is super popular around the world.
It's also quite interesting to hear him admit all he can think of was offering crumbs. Crumbs for the hurt, damage done, and radicalized fans who harassed and likely voted for Trump, who stripped away rights from marginalized people. I can't help but to point out how he said Mexicans instead of Hispanic or Latino people. I'm half Mexican, but I'm well aware of how cringy it is to group all Latino people together under Mexican when that doesn't accurately represent the many different Latino people. Also, it's weird to group nationalities when you're talking about ethnic and racial group identities, since white people can identify with being Mexican. Say I'm nitpicking, but this stuck out to me.
The way they're black people's platforms that you brought down, bring some black people's platforms up.
I think that's a good idea, and I'm going to take your advice on that.
Olaimi gave a perfect suggestion to Idubbz on bringing black content creators' platforms up. Yet, a year later, He has not done that, despite him saying it's a great idea since he ran black content creators off the platform. He literally just used this interview as PR and went right back to doing him, confirming his prophecy on how he shouldn't just be able to make an apology and walk away from everything. I even triple checked when going through his channel, yet I couldn't even find a playlist or community tab post. So my next step was to check his Twitter to give him the benefit of the doubt. But the most he did was quote tweet Olimi's interview with him. This is why I'm frustrated with the handful of white creators who ran to welcome him with open arms, grinning wide as hell, while he hasn't even attempted to do more than the bare minimum, which was an apology. He got away with making millions on racist, hateful content, and now is deemed brand friendly after his mini apology tour to come off as if he cares, but his lack of action shows otherwise. This makes me think deeper on how his wife was able to benefit from racist N-word saying content. Behind every racist white man is a white woman that loves him, holds him down, and supports the BS, since she directly benefited from racist content that positively impacted her life. Houses bought, luxury items, etc. She was able to have a successful fans account and grow as a streamer. Creator Clash was able to be made. So no, she's not brave or amazing for impacting Idubbz to shifting, especially now we established that that was a self-serving PR tour. I'm done with that narrative, and people need to think more critically before rushing to forgive someone that didn't directly impact them negatively. This is a miscarriage of justice, and once again, black people are still ignored. I and other black people are forced to live with the trauma of his racist content. I won't ever get the unbearable years of high school back when the N-word was thrown my way by so-called edgy white kids in my suburban area. Trauma that impacted the way I navigate through the world till this day. But that's nothing new for black Americans. Suggestions I can give Idubbz that I know he won't even bother attempting to remedy are so simple it's enraging. He easily can put together a playlist for black and brown people, do fundraiser streams with large content creators to help put together a black creator fund to share the wealth he made off of our suffering. But we all know he's too busy running to the bank with the income he's gained from this apology tour. Believe it or not, Idubbz isn't even the biggest person I personally have a bone to pick with. ChrisRayGun, a slightly lesser known but also had a rebrand after making thousands of dollars off of bigoted, racist, anti-intellectual content. He also was one of Franchesca Ramsey's biggest harassers, as for some reason he had such a hate boner for her simply making anti-racist content for MTV. The amount of now deleted Gamergate videos he made, joining in on the dog pile on Anita Sarkeesian, the wild stuff that would come out of his mouth, and narratives he would push, amazes me somehow how he was able to gracefully rebrand once it wasn't profitable to make the same edgy comedy videos that help lead people to the alt-right pipeline. Him being the starting point, yet you'll later see his views on what he calls a narrative. Let's dive right into some of his old content so you can understand why I, as an ex-viewer, might have a bone to pick with him and his current positions that you'll see soon enough. Before I do, let's let him speak for himself on how he viewed his content during that era.
It felt at the time like the point of view of the reasonable liberal, the liberal who understood the context of humor, who didn't get bent out of shape over every little thing, just wasn't being voiced. To the point where I thought I was crazy, like nobody else thinks this is ridiculous? Am I really the only person who thinks this is all real? It was super alienating, but eventually I did come across, like-minded people, and that content became popular, and, that was that. Fast forward a year or two in late 2015, early 2016, and it became pretty clear that anti-social justice warrior positions, or whatever you want to call it, anti-PC notions, weren't as niche as they used to be. Many high-profile artists, high-profile content creators, all sorts of people were kind of joining in on the fun. Ethan and Gila started poking fun at the whole humongous situation. PewDiePie was starting to delve into similar topics. It's weird to think about now, but back in the day, back in like 2014, it really did feel like every single popular YouTube content creator, that's PewDiePie, that's Ethan and Gila, that's Idubbz, that's all these people. And because of that, I no longer felt very compelled to just share my opinion in a serious way. It felt like representation for that point of view was already relatively commonplace. But what I did find was that there was a distinct lack of comedy-focused content based around these kinds of topics.
Notice how he mentioned Idubbz, This is why we are saying Idubbz influenced creators to go further, which created a culture of apathy, hatred, racism, and harassment. ChrisRayGun said it himself. He didn't care to intellectually engage with the left-leaning content he disliked. He was more excited to punch down and make jokes out of stuff that he had no business mocking. But let's see the comedy content he's so proud of that he still has currently up on his YouTube channel.
Can we all just agree that Black Lives Matter isn't the opposite of All Lives Matter? Black lives just matter. There's no need to overcomplicate it.
Okay, you don't know what the word opposite means. It's okay. It's a really big word. It's a complicated word to understand. You see, I agree with you that all lives matter isn't the opposite of Black Lives Matter because that doesn't make any sense. The word all literally would include black lives. The opposite of Black Lives Matter would be Black Lives Don't Matter. It's pretty simple. But it's the Black Lives Matter people who feel like all lives matter is the opposite. Like they're the ones treating it as if it is. As if it invalidates what they're saying, even though all, again, includes black lives. So yeah, no, it's BLM who thinks it's the opposite. No one else is under that impression.
Started off heavy, calling Black Lives Matter as the opposite of All Lives Matter. Loudly, wrongly, and boldly pushing the straw man of All Lives Matter, whose roots is simply a racist counter-protest to Black Lives Matter by triggered white and anti-black people. He confidently pushed such ignorant, harmful rhetoric, supporting the All Lives Matter's lies, and demonized the whole black social justice movement. Because how dare black people bring awareness to our nuanced plight? But since ChrisRayGun is too ignorant to understand Black Lives Matter, let me break it down in elementary simple terms. Let's say Black Lives Matter represents a person with a burning house. The people with the burning house are advocating for aid and support. But here comes All Lives Matter, whose house is not on fire. They're completely fine. But just the idea of people with burning houses are advocating for themselves irks them to their racist core. That's simple, but common sense wasn't too common in the 2015 to 2017 era of YouTube.
Also, Blue Lives Matter isn't a thing. Cops weren't born with blue skin, right? I mean, yeah, they weren't born blue.
Good. Brilliant. You gotta be kidding me with this shit. You can't say something you're addressing isn't a thing just because you have a negative opinion of it. Also, they weren't born blue? What the hell does that mean? What does that literally mean? So because they weren't born cops, it's silly to say that their lives matter? You can't be serious. Hey, handicapped lives matter, crippled lives matter, but only if you were born crippled. If you jumped on the crippled bandwagon in your mid-20s like, oh, look at me, I got polio, your life doesn't matter. Christopher Reeve? That guy joined way late. I was crippled before it was even cool. Stephen Hawking? More like, even walking is hard for you now, but it wasn't always, because you weren't born this way. The point of saying Blue Lives Matter is basically saying cops' lives matter. Like, you can't just a cop just because a cop somewhere else did a bad thing. Like, it's stupid. And that logic also extends to black people and white people and every people under the sun, whether or not they're born a certain way, whether or not they're in a certain profession. You can't just convict someone of something because someone else who is similar to them did it. Ooh, is it right or is it wrong to suggest that white people are inherently evil due to the sins of their ancestors? I do say, if you're actually seriously having that conversation, you need to just cease. I also want to take this opportunity to say that I'm not inherently against the idea of Black Lives Matter. It's a totally fine phrase to say. It's a totally reasonable phrase to say. It's not false in any way. My problem lies with the movement and what they've done, because I feel like what they've done is counterintuitive. All that blah. You get the picture.
When you didn't think he could go any lower, he does just that by attempting to validate the Blue Lives Matter straw man. It's already pissing me off, but let me also break this silly argument into simple terms, since I highly doubt he changed his views on this due to the video still being up. Cops can take off their uniform. It's a choice to be a power-hungry cop that overlooks racism and injustice. No one in Black Lives Matter advocated for cops to Black Lives Matter, just like All Lives Matter, only sprouted up to counter-protest Black Lives Matter. The deep-rooted racism within both the All Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter hashtag, because they weren't movements, is maddening. Anything but critically engaging with what black people have to say about our own plight. The fact that it's taken George Floyd for people with ChrisRayGun's ignorant perspective to shift their views is another frustrating reality. It's also so cringy to hear the way he talks about disabled people, but what can you expect from such a big-brain YouTube comedian? Now remember when I said he was one of Franchesca's biggest harassers? Well, this video just gives you a glimpse into the racist talking points he had when talking about her and those adjacent. This video pissed me off, and you'll see why.
Now, this is the part of the podcast that I feel is the most telling. Fran, you have a microphone not because of your skills, talent, or unique perspective. Because let's be real, I'm gonna be blunt here for a minute. Because, Fran, your unique perspective is shared by literally every single person on your panel. Your skill, your special skill, Fran, is that you can be relied upon and depended on to toe the line that Google wants. Because honestly, out of genuine curiosity, Fran, what is your talent? Can you sing? Can you edit? Can you act? Because all I see on your personal channel is vlogs and BuzzFeed clickbait. And granted, it's BuzzFeed clickbait before BuzzFeed clickbait, but pioneering BuzzFeed clickbait isn't exactly a talent. I don't understand where this self-aggrandizing view of yourself is coming from. As if that somehow makes you a better person than anybody in the audience just because you were invited to a panel solely because your opinion is the most palatable. Like, what? Get a grip.
I am someone that has been invited to be here.
Yeah, Fran, sure. I'm very positive that the bar to get on this panel is so very high. It must require a very large audience and a very immense amount of relevance just to make the list. I'm sure of it. I'm sure it has nothing to do with any other factor involving where you lean politically. I'm sure that has nothing to do with it.
Yes, this clown was undermining the Cat Black. It's almost like he wanted to say they only got the opportunity due to DEI initiatives, but the phrase DEI didn't exist at the time, or he'd be screaming at the top of his lungs. I'm just amazed at how anti-black he can be, writing Franchesca off as untalented as if skill, writing, editing, etc. doesn't go into her videos, let alone her MTV show. They had to be so disingenuous to justify their attacks on her skills and work, all because she made them think deeper on topics they were introduced to. Franchesca did more than pioneer what he calls BuzzFeed content. Franchesca Ramsey laid out the foundation of BreadTube, or more known as leftist content. The needed discourse she pushed got her harassed when it's now common leftist knowledge. Put some respect on her name. That's more than enough of his older content to witness to understand how harmful and racist his content was. It was enough psychic damage done to myself editing this all. The next question one would ask is his views on his older content, and is he apologetic? Is he taking accountability for indoctrinating and making his younger viewers more bigoted and racist? We can find that out right now in this video he made post-Vosh stream that made him reflect on his past content. It's rich with growth, as you'll see.
And I had a lot of left-wingers kind of flipping out at me saying like, oh, they didn't believe me, they didn't really believe I changed my mind, they think I'm just sort of jumping into the left-wing bandwagon because that's the grift now and that's what's popular and relevant. Now, normally I would just sort of let this stuff go, but we're all in quarantine and I'm bored out of my mind, so I figured I'd read some of the really brilliant criticisms that have been levied my way. To be honest, if you're a creator who apologizes for foolishly spending years pumping out videos filled with disingenuous far-right talking points, ultimately serving as a tool for the alt-right pipeline, and you just leave those videos up, I'm just going to assume you don't mean it. Well, that's a pretty good assumption to make, because I never said I'm sorry. I never once apologized in that entire stream. You see, acknowledging that you've made mistakes in the past and working to change those actions so that you make fewer mistakes, that's not an apology. I know you want an apology, like really desperately. I know you get off the thought of people groveling at your feet, but no, I didn't apologize. Instead, I just decided to better myself and not rely on fucking useless apologies and just flowery words. I can remember literally every single apology that I've genuinely given since 2010 because I give them out so rarely, because I like to be the kind of person that when you get an apology from me, you know you mean it. And I know this is like an old topic, but I never actually got around to throwing my hat in the ring. I'm not gonna take my hat off because my hair looks fucking terrible. But I really, really hate, like genuinely loathe this pipeline conversation because it's full of so many arbitrary stops and random conveniences, it just infuriates me. Your mild political satire was misappropriated by the alt-right and used to draw more people into the alt-right. I know because I know several people who have told me that this happened to them. Well, that's wonderful. That's great. I've also received Hundreds of messages from people saying that people like me, Shoe on Head, and Armored Skeptic were the people that kept them from falling deeper in to the rabbit hole. So what do you want me to do? Do you want me to apologize for content that potentially helped plenty of people as well? And even beyond that, the whole pipeline thing is just a game of like, who's responsible hot potato. It's annoying.
This blew my socks off hearing him be so unapologetic and literally taking the opposite approach than Idubbz, thinking just bettering himself is sufficient while leaving up his bigoted content, including the videos harassing Franchesca Ramsey. His views of apologies is so toxic, the machismo to the max. I don't throw around the word narcissistic lightly ever, especially as someone who dated a genuine narcissist, but this gives parallels to what I identified with my past abusive relationship. I'm shocked he had the nerve to confidently record this, but it doesn't stop here. The audacity to boldly dismiss the alt-right pipeline because it's annoying to him, since he was literally the gateway content creator. The fact that it's common knowledge, yet ChrisRayGun and Shoe Head are the only ones denying it, not a lick of accountability, and clearly no growth. The idea that his bold racist content was used against black and queer people is annoying to him, while us marginalized people had to live with the consequences of his content. He was literally rooting for Trump to win, but wants to pretend like he didn't aid in the alt-right pipeline. We're definitely dealing with a genius here. When the bar was already low for Idubbz, here comes ChrisRayGun bringing it to hell. Yet, it doesn't even end here. Idubbz apologizing pushed a needed discourse, one that Shoe Head and ChrisRayGun ignorantly participated in. But before that, we must watch this TikTok.
Anti-social justice warrior era is what made the alt-right pipeline mainstream, and I will not elaborate.
I'm Franchesca. I created a show for MTV called Decoded in 2015. It was all about race, pop culture, and identity. 8 seasons, over 90 episodes, and that entire time I was harassed by anti-social justice warriors on YouTube. So they would make these videos debunking my content, calling me names, sometimes using racial slurs, saying that I should unalive myself, that I should be SA'd, that I hate white people, that I hate men. They would talk about my now ex-husband, but it was all under the guise of comedy. And the thinking was that they were purporting that marginalized people are lying about our experiences, we're lying about our history, we are making a big deal out of things that don't matter, and we're creating words out of thin air, which, hello, that's where words come from. Someone has to make them up. And because these videos would target people that were extremely online and in need of a community, they were able to dupe people into consuming hours worth of content that had no research or fact-based evidence at all. They were pure opinion. And as we've seen with the pandemic, a lot of people don't understand the difference between opinions and facts. And when someone makes a 40-minute video debunking a 5-minute episode of MTV Decoded filled with lies and misinformation and straw man arguments, it's impossible to debunk it yourself without getting sucked into a hole of like wasting your time and energy. I will never forget a guy made a whole music video that was animated starring a character that looks suspiciously like me. I used to have locks, and so this was a black girl with locks, and it was all about how triggered she was and how upset she was, and essentially like creating this narrative that people who advocate for social justice are actually the ones oppressing white people, oppressing men, oppressing straight people. I mean, this guy spent money to have a video produced. He went into the studio. I mean, it was well done. Like, these people were making a living off of talking about me and spreading lies and essentially creating fascism-like content. So these people were essentially primed to consume alt-right content because they were being essentially fed it through comedy videos from their favorite creators.
Well said from the source herself. She's right about it being a waste of time going back and forth with their content that had no research or genuine attempt of understanding. It reminds me of a Toni Morrison quote. The very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, and you spend 20 years proving you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Someone says you have no kingdoms, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary. There will always be one more thing. I wanted to laser in on the summer of last year. Thankfully, I've saved many screenshots to put everything together chronologically. This took a lot of psychic damage to relive this moment, since I was targeted when I spoke up. Like I said earlier, Idubbz apologizing opened up a discourse on old wounds. It made many of us to reflect on how we were impacted and what creators came to mind that participated in the BS. An ex-Shoe on Head fan spoke up, which went viral since Shoe and ChrisRayGun quote tweeted, dismissing them and invalidating the fact that their content indoctrinated young viewers and created self-hate in some viewers. The mental gymnastics were extreme that I couldn't help myself but to chime in since I was an ex-viewer as well who had to undo the damage done to me mentally. This led ChrisRayGun to argue in my comments, downplaying his negative impact. Franchesca at the time was going viral as she learned about the Idubbz apology and called out those who harassed her like ChrisRayGun. She laid out all the receipts and pointed out the animation that was based on her that got millions of views. This video you're about to see by Franchesca made me and others emotional as she candidly speaks her mind in pain. A lot transpires after this, so listen closely to what is said.
I didn't intend on making a video about this, but I'm so angry that I just have to say something and just get it out and let it go. So recently there's been a wave of people who've made bigoted content on the internet coming forward and apologizing. TikTok, we've got Kelly Cagdon. On YouTube, we have Idubbz, I think is how you say his name. And in years past, we've had Shane Dawson. And all of these people I have different relationships with. So I hosted a show for MTV called MTV Decoded. I actually created the show. I wrote on the show. I hired tons of incredible people and made a lot of great content that I am very proud of. But at the time that the show was on, I dealt with a lot of harassment because of it from these people that labeled themselves anti-social justice warriors, anti-feminist on YouTube, including Idubbz. And he made a number of videos where he used the N-word fully uncensored, where he put my face in videos and called me, and said that my work was cancer and my work made him want to. Most of these videos have been privated, so I can't show them to you, but I've seen them. And he created a culture and a fan base that then harassed me. So did Shane Dawson, right? Doing blackface, saying the N-word, none of that stuff exists in a vacuum. Kelly Cagdon using her platform to demonize other trans people, demonize queer people, say that black people, enjoyed being slaves. All of this contributes to a culture of harassment, and the target being black people and queer people and women on the internet, including myself. And when these people suddenly have a change of heart, we're just supposed to accept their apology and move on. And I can't move on, and I can't accept an apology when an apology is the least you can do. These people have made millions of dollars off of their hateful content. Millions of dollars off of my face and my name. People will put my full government name in the caption, in the metadata, in the description box, on screen, my face, my headshot. There are people that have put my name on their IMDb to say that I've been in their videos harassing me. Okay, people have built entire careers off of hateful, bigoted content. And now they have a change of heart, and we're all just supposed to accept it and move on. I'm sorry. You cannot make a living off of my harassment and then assume that a sorry is enough. It's just really not. And then some of these people haven't said sorry at all, which again, bar is in hell. They just have pivoted. They just suddenly started making content that's a little less racist, a little less sexist, a little less homophobic. And if you bring up to them the shit that they've said in the past, I'm talking about you, ChrisRayGun, or whatever you call yourself, then we're just supposed to pretend it didn't happen. We're supposed to pretend that you didn't use my face and my name and suggest that I was a grifter and that I hate all white people and I think all men should die, and you didn't suggest to your audience that it was okay to treat me that way, right? We're just gonna pretend that didn't happen. I remember one time I was walking through the airport. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. I was on my way to a speaking gig at a college in, I don't remember where. And this white kid comes up to me, and I would get recognized all the time. So it wasn't unusual for people to see me and say hi. And so this white kid comes up to me in the airport and he's like, oh my God, you're Franchesca Ramsey. And I'm like, yeah, hi, whatever. I'm like tired. And I'm just like, hey. And he's like, do you know who Idubbz is? And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, I love Idubbz's videos about you. And I was terrified in that moment because I was realizing I'm face to face with someone that is a fan of someone that has made content about how much they hate me and what a terrible person I am and how I'm oppressing white people and how I'm oppressing men. So honestly, save me the fucking sorry. Save me the sorry. What about the money that you've made off of this hateful content? What about the culture that you have influenced where queer people, trans people, black people, women don't feel fucking safe in this country because they know they're interacting with your fucking fans? What about that? Like, what's the compensation for that? Like, honestly, I would like to know. I really, like, y'all let me know when you figure that out. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. And throughout my career, despite like not cursing and having a smile and being respectable, I'm always painted as the angry black woman. Always. I'm always untalented. I'm always a harpy. I'm always, making something out of nothing. Always. And now, while I'm sorry is just supposed to wash it all away. Well, this is a response to everyone that's made harassing content about me over the course of my decade-plus career. Chris, Shane, Idubbz, I don't even know what his fucking real name is. Apology not accepted. Will never be accepted. I am not looking to reform, be buddies with racists or bigots. I don't care what leaves you've turned over. It's not enough for me. It will never be enough for me. Stop asking me to forgive these people. I'm never going to do it.
A lot of what she said I have throughout this video essay, so there's not too much I can add. Notice how she called out ChrisRayGun by name. How the bar is in hell since he refuses to apologize at all. You'd think after getting that real that Chewinhead and ChrisRayGun would reflect or even give the bare minimum apology. That their humanity would finally show up. But nope, they triple down. It's frustrating to read these tweets and see them further attack her. He even goes as far to deny the animation isn't even of her. The animator popped up in the comments to try to support ChrisRayGun's claim, but I'll debunk that lie shortly after we watch Chris's attempt to gaslight us in this Cope livestream.
I don't think I said anything particularly hostile today. I was a little snarky for sure. It's a really cool fan fiction you got there. And it's a little snarky, but it's just I don't know what to tell you, dude. The accusation is so narcissistic and absorbed. Like, that's me. She was like, who else has a show and is black and has locks? And it's like, the girl in the cartoon doesn't have a show because that's not you.
Yeah,
and it's so. She goes like, because she goes like, that character like whines about like that character in the video like promotes a Patreon after getting Chris fired. I never did that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you didn't.
Because it's not
it's not you.
It bugs me to see him have the nerve to call her narcissistic, given all the signifiers he gave her. Me being an art major knew this didn't add up, so I tweeted at the artist, since it just didn't add up. Especially when this is from an era where black people were made fun of for asking for representation, where none was found. The math wasn't mathing, so I directly asked where the inspiration came from. He said the quiet part out loud. What a hilarious impersonation of a racist idiot. There you have it, from the artist himself. Let a bigot talk, and they'll tell on themselves when pressed with the right questions. ChrisRayGun and the animator tried hiding behind the technicality of it not technically being her. It's a game of semantics. As this all started to come to a wrapping point, I dropped one last tweet that got the devil themselves responding. It's so rich reading the comments coming from him. So ChrisRayGun, this is me playing ball a year later. I apologize for everyone that got psychic damage for watching this video till the end. People weren't being critical enough or didn't cover the needed angles for Idubbz, and I couldn't find a video on ChrisRayGun. Two perfect examples why quickly giving forgiveness to bigots who haven't done the work isn't a good idea. I've come to terms with whatever might come my way for making this video. What matters more to me is that Black, brown, disabled, and queer people feel seen. I also wanted to put some respect on our girl Franchesca's name. She's owed so many apologies and more. I lastly want to mention that I'm having a fundraiser live stream Friday 12 p.m. PST/3 p.m. EST. I've been off my HRT for 3 months, which greatly undone almost all my progress I made in a year. So if you want to help out and learn more, attend Friday with me, Turb, and other creators that will be present. Thank you.